And we're back to learning CSS. Let me show you how you can combine the two principles that I've shown you in the last bigger topics in my playlist. So we want to combine a navigation bar with a drop-down feature. You've seen that on the web, pretty sure. When you hover over nav bar, then a drop-down pops up where you can see more options for subpages. We're going to create one of these basics. If you don't know at all how to create a nav bar, check out my playlist. As I've said, I've talked about that, made videos about it, where I went over the details a little bit slower. Here I want to go a little bit faster over the basics. At first we'll create a nav bar container, add an unordered list, and then add a couple of links for every subpage that we want to have. Let's say for about, blog, contact, and resources maybe. That's usually found on these blogging websites. We also need to add a placeholder link so that we actually see a link here. To do that, we'll add the href attribute and add a hashtag about. So here you would put your about subpage or the URL of it. Once we've got that covered, we are done with our basic nav bar in the HTML. And we can start styling it in the CSS. I've collected a couple of fonts and colors, so we're going to go over this quickly. I want to add a font family of Arial sans serif, a margin and padding of 0, and a background color, so background minus color of F0, F0, F0. This is for the body. Now let's style our nav. I'll add a background color which is a dark gray of 333. I'll select the unordered list in our nav bar, and here I set the list style type to none. I want to get rid of the bullet points. Once again, I reset the margin and the padding to 0. It should be by default, but it doesn't hurt to add that. And I set the overflow to hidden. And now we can pull that into a single line by selecting the link items in the unordered list in our nav elements by setting the float to left. And now we'll style the anchor elements inside of it. So nav, unordered list, list item A for anchor. Set the display to block, shouldn't change much. But we definitely want to have some spacing and align it properly. We also should have a color that gives us more contrast. I use white. Text minus align. I want to have it set to center. And I want to adjust the padding. Let's say, not 4. Let me make that 14 and 16. And we want to get rid of our underline. To be able to do that, we use text minus decoration and set it to none. So that is a basic nav bar. We want to have a hover effect. The background color should be a little bit darker, so I use 111. Everything looks good here. Now it's time to add our dropdown. As I've said, it's the same process. Let me add that to block, not to resources, so that you can see you can put it in the middle anywhere. It doesn't have to be at the start or the end. So what we do is we nest it inside of the list item for block and create a new div container here. I give that the class dropdown minus content. I have to close this div container. Again, it's inside of the list item for block. And here we can now add our anchor elements for all of the sub pages that we want here. I'll directly add an href placeholder. What can we make this? Let's say software. I'll make that software, devices and courses, something like this maybe. Close your anchor tag for each. You will be able to directly see it. We want to make that vanish by default and only edit when we hover over block. We'll have to select all of this in our CSS. And as I've said, it's the same process. We'll select our dropdown minus content class to target this element. First up, we'll select it and set the display to none. You can directly select it here, but I want to use nav ul before it, just in case you use this dropdown content later on somewhere on your website. It's always a good idea to be specific with your selectors. You can see here display none makes it disappear. And here we also want to style it. But it's a good idea, let me delete this. It's a good idea to show you the hover effect that makes it appear first. So I delete this part. And now we select the nav ul le and then the drop down contents and the hover case, but the hover case should be for the list item. So this is our block element. As I've said, everything, the drop down content is nested inside of the list item for block. And here we set the display to block. So if I refresh it, I hover over it, and now it appears. So that's the basic drop down effect. You can certainly style this a little bit better. First up here we add position absolute. It makes it temporarily disappear. Now we add a couple of features that make it appear. First up, the background color should be the same. So 333. We also want to give it a min width. Let me use 160. And we want to adjust the Z index, set it to 1 so that it appears on top of everything on your website. And now we can see it again. Now we want to have a hover effect for this as well. So just like we did for the anchor tag before, it's the background color 111. We also want to have that for drop down content. So I copy paste this here. And that's all there is. You can see this has now a drop down with the same features. Try to recode it step by step. Once again, if this was too fast, check out my CSS playlist where I went over creating an nav bar and I dropped down a little bit slower and more in detail.